This is the third chapter where we're going to study biological molecules. Alright, so these four pictures actually show you the four most important biological molecules. All living things are made up of these four classes of biomolecules. So the first picture, you can probably guess, yeah, bread has a lot of carbohydrates, and in tofu, proteins. And then you can see here that's fats. Now, not all fats are bad. Right. Okay, and then the last picture shows you DNA, which is nucleic acid. So nucleic acids include not just DNA, but also RNA, and some other types. For example, ATP, the energy currency, it's also a type of nucleic acid. All right, now let's look at this term macromolecules. Micro means large, big. But if you replace A with an I, micro, that means small. For example, microorganisms are those living organisms that are so small that we can't really see them with our naked eyes, right? So usually you have to use a microscope. These four classes of macromolecules, the larger molecules, are all organic molecules. So if you remember, organic molecules have neighboring carbons forming chemical bonds, right? The covalent bonds. There's one exception, and that's methane, CH4. It doesn't have two carbons forming organic or covalent bond, but that's just an exception. All right, so we're going to move on. Now, before we get to each individual class of micromolecule, we have to learn these two terms, what they are, monomers and polymers. Mono, the prefix means a one, and the poly means a many. So you can imagine which one is going to be a bigger molecule, really big, right? Polymers are much bigger. So when we talk about those biomolecules, they are polymers, meaning they can get really big, and they're made up of monomers, right? The building blocks, or sometimes we call them subunits. So here's a quick example. So starch, I don't know if you guys already know it, but starch is a type of carbohydrate, right? Okay, so one of my favorite foods contains a lot of starch, and that would be French fries. So starch, the molecules are actually a lot bigger than this. We're just looking at a very small portion of starch molecule. So it's going to be a very, very, very long chains of, you will see, this subunit, which is glucose. Okay, so starch molecule is a polymer, and it's made up of monomers, which are glucose. So this is one glucose, another glucose, another glucose. When they link their arms together, right, form or linked by chemical bonds, they form a polymer. So when you need to build polymers using subunits, using monomers, it's going to be achieved by this type of chemical reaction called dehydration synthesis. Okay, so dehydration, you know, you are removing water, right? So this shows you the dehydration process. So these two are two subunits, smaller molecules, monomers, and then we're going to try to build a polymer, this larger molecule. So what you do is you are going to remove a hydrogen from this monomer and the hydroxyl group from the other monomer, and when you have these two groups together, that's going to form water. Okay, so when you remove these two groups together, these two carbons are going to, you know, be linked, right, form a chemical bond. So you're kind of combining these two monomers, and that will form a polymer. Okay, so in order to build something big, you have to remove water. That's why it's called a dehydration synthesis, right? You're synthesizing something. Now, this process requires energy. So when you build something from small to big, you need to have energy input. So you need to provide energy. On the other hand, when you want to break down these polymers into their building blocks, monomers, this is achieved by hydrolysis. Okay, hydro again means water. Lysis means kind of breaking down. So you're almost doing the reverse of dehydration. So you're providing water, okay, and then the water is going to be broken down to hydrogen and the hydroxyl group, and then they will be added to these two parts of this polymer, and then you're going to form two monomer molecules. Okay, so this is how you can break things down. Now, this process releases energy because whenever you break a chemical bond, you're releasing the energy stored in that chemical bond. So when we break down macromolecules, the big molecules, polymers, to smaller molecules, you're releasing energy. Okay? One interesting fact about the hydrolysis process, remember you're adding water, right? Providing water, is when you eat your food. Okay, so when you eat food, let's say you're eating French fries, right? There's a lot of starch in French fries, and your body will try to break down starch and obtain glucose as the breakdown product because your cells use glucose for energy. So as you're eating, your body is breaking down starch, and that requires water. So this is one of the reasons why you often feel thirsty when you eat things. So this is just kind of interesting fact. All right, so the next two slides just have more information about the two processes, so you guys can review those and let me know if you have any questions.